Where the Wild Things Are. Stupid. We watched Where the Wild Things Are, and we are in defense of bad movies. Hey everybody, Sam here with another In Defense of Bad Movies, the show where we talk to interesting people. No, the show where we watch a movie that is generally regarded as bad and somebody defends it as good. I am joined, as always, by Bobby.
Interesting person 1.
And Lauren.
Adequate person 2.
Oh, that's not true.
Oh,
You're interesting.
you're sweet.
And as I said in the opening thing, we watched Where the Wild Things Are. That was brought to us by Bobby.
Bobby, you produced that movie?
I did.
Wow.
I did. It was a lot of work.
Bless
a lot
you.
of hard work.
Bless you for that.
Mm-hmm. No, but you brought it as the movie to defend. It is actually it's critically it's positive.
Yes, it is. It has a C critically on Rotten Tomatoes.
And that gets degrees. Am I right, guys?
But it is rotten audience wise.
Yeah,
and also I haven't really met anyone who says like very nice things about it.
Really? Yeah. It's like in the 50s. It's a 56% audience score. So yeah, that's not great.
Yeah. I feel like we don't really talk about it anymore. That's one of those movies that just kind of got lost.
Yeah. So what do you have to say for yourself?
Yeah.
In the movie.
I hadn't watched it in a while, and I still like it. When I was very excited for this movie when it came out. From the first trailer, I was just super duper excited. I thought it would be more kind of twee and whimsical than it actually was. And I remember being very caught off guard when I watched it in theaters at how kind of dirty and melancholy it was. That being said, I think that's a really interesting take on that book, and it's a pretty faithful take on that book. And all that aside, I think the visuals look really cool. I think the wild things look really interesting. And again, they don't look cute and quirky. They look gross and kind of scary and dirty.
Carol has snot coming from his nose constantly.
Perpetual wet nose.
It's a beautiful movie.
Yes.
Yeah, it definitely is that, for sure. It's just...
Are they costumes? Is it CG? Is it a mix of the two?
It's a full body costume.
Jim Henson Studios did the costumes, and then they did CGI faces on top of the costumes.
That explains a lot. Okay.
They had initially, to jump ahead to some trivia, just because it's fun, they had initially had like full articulated masks on them, but just once with eyeballs and facial features moving. But when they got them like 6 weeks before the shoot, they put them on and they were preposterously heavy. And so they just had to gut the full faces, like send them back and just like take out everything in the head, and we're just going to use the body and do everything CGI on the face.
If they were little people inside of the costumes, they would have just been like, yeah, it's too heavy, whatever, screw it. We don't care about you.
No, they were using real people.
It was tall people, so they, count more.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I mean, I really like that this movie kind of hones in on the central theme of the book, which is the loneliness of being a kid, and kind of how when you're a kid, you feel these very intense feelings. You feel angry, and you don't always have the ability to articulate into words why you're angry, why you feel isolated, why you feel lonely. And I feel like that's very much what the movie's about and what the movie's exploring. And it does I will say, it does feel like it gets the pacing gets weird toward the middle of the movie.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
And maybe it gets a little self-indulgent with some of the sequences in the middle, but in the middle of those sequences are just really beautiful moments that I don't know. Like, I wouldn't sacrifice those moments. So it's just an interesting beast of a movie, and I just kind of wanted to talk about it.
It's interesting you mentioned about the themes in the book, because I I think for you it was like a big part of your childhood. It was never really for me.
Oh.
No, and I've read it before, and I read it again today preparing for this, and it is certainly not spelled out any themes. And I feel like there might be a lot of projecting those themes onto the book.
Well, the book is, it is definitely shorter and simpler.
Yeah.
But it's about, a kid who picks a fight with his mom, goes up to his room, runs, in the middle of a tantrum.
Yeah.
Runs away to an angry imaginary place, becomes the king of the wild things, and decides he wants to go home and have dinner.
I will say that in the book, you see very little of his home life. Extremely little. And in the movie, you see enough of his home life to know, like, he might not just be, like, a little boy in the middle of a tantrum. He might have serious emotional issues.
Well, the family is in the middle of crisis as well.
Yes.
And so...
It's what's his name? Feels like a Squid and the Whale episode.
Noah
like
Baumbach.
Noah Baumbach. I wanted to say Noah Baumbauer or Nora Baumbauer. I'm like, no, A, it's a guy, and B, that's not his name. But yeah,
But I think what you get from his home life, and I think a lot of this is filtered through Max's perception, is that he's in a period of transition. He's close with his sister, who's, transitioning into kind of a teen life. His dad, it seems, is maybe recently no longer in the picture. We don't know exactly what happened to his dad or what the deal with his dad is, but his mom is dating now, and he just doesn't know how to process the changes that are happening in his life.
And dating a guy with a really bad temper. Like, why? Yeah.
He's overstepping his bounds.
Talk about wild things.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess the secret is he's always angry.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Which we should say the sequel to this movie's coming out in a week, right?
Yeah, right.
Wild Things Ragnarok?
Yeah.
Wild Things Ragnarok.
This is like part of Hulk's lost years before he went to Cambodia.
We probably should say, just for if there's anyone who...
Edward Norton played the
anyone who listens but does not watch the movie, it was played by... Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo. I actually have trouble with his name. He's one of those people...
Because it sounds like a cartoon name. Like Mark Ruffalo is like, he hangs out with the Gruffalo, and he's just an imaginary character.
I think he was in the Riff Raff segments of the old Heathcliff cartoon. I might be dating myself by bringing that up.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Heathcliff is a bad comic strip that they made a bad cartoon based on that bad comic strip. And there was another segment of these...
It's based on Wuthering Heights, right?
Exactly, yeah. So, I thought this movie was boring.
Did you really?
Definitely. You mentioned the pacing issues. There was a big, like, those sections in the middle where I was just like, okay, this needs to move a lot faster than it is. Because, I was reading, like, one of the complaints people had online was that there's not a lot of plot there. Mm-mm. And there isn't. And that's okay. So it kind of, to me, starts becoming almost like a tone poem. Mm-hmm. And I hate tone poems. So that just kind of drove me nuts. And I appreciate, like, what it's saying. Even in, like, an hour 20, it was about an hour 40. Mm-hmm. Like, shave off a good 20 minutes of it, and I'd feel a lot more comfortable. But it was just, like, come on, guys. I don't know. And as impressive as the costumes and everything were, it's like, okay, I get it. And I don't know. Mm-hmm. So, what do you have to say about that?
No, I think I totally get what you're saying, and I think that's fair. I was really into it, and I kind of like I enjoy that it kind of speaks the language. It's interesting. It speaks the language of a child. Like all the Wild Things kind of speak like children. One of them, Ira introduces himself and says, like, I put the holes in the trees. And you meet Douglas for the first time, and even though he sounds like Chris Cooper and he's being very serious, he's talking about he and Carol, who's played by James Gandolfini, who does an amazing job in this. Mm-hmm. They sound like James Gandolfini and Chris Cooper, but they're talking very seriously about how they're putting, like, notches into trees. And it just doesn't make any sense. But I found that also very entertaining and just kind of very weird, and I was into it. But I also get how that's kind of self-indulgent and how maybe, maybe they go on a little too long with that. But there was just always these weird things happening. Like, I'm trying to think of another, like when Judith, who's kind of like the grumpy wild thing.
Catherine
O'Hara. Like the little weird fights she gets into with the other characters. Like, I just always found that kind of stuff really, really weird, and I liked it.
It certainly has its moments, and I came in wanting very much to like it, loving the book, loving Spike Jonze, thinking that it looked like striking and cool, and I like those little strange moments, but it definitely either inconsistency of tone or just too much of the same. Like, it's draggingly sad, and I don't mind that because, as we say, it is the exploration of like a child's sadness, and that's what the island represents and the characters, and so of course it should have those moments. And even though it makes me feel incredibly painful and uncomfortable to have to relive just the bleakness of childhood, like that sucks, but then there would be weird moments that felt slightly unearned because like a weird level, like it's weird here, but it's not weird enough that Carol rips off Douglas's arm and that's just like, hey man, that was my arm.
Because the goat guy got hit in the head with the claw, and he had a big wound there.
Yeah, and he was hurt.
And that was the thing, The
world had consequences. But, and then Douglas just like sticks a stick in his stump and he's fine.
I think
that was his favorite arm, too.
Emotional hurt means way more to these characters than physical hurt does, right? And Alexander, who's the goat, voiced by Paul Dano, he always feels inadequate, and he always feels left out. And, when he gets hurt, he feels humiliated. And I think that's why, we have that moment where he's sad about being physically hurt. Douglas, gets his arm ripped off, but he's more in control of his emotions. He's kind of like the peace broker. And so I think that's why we don't spend a ton of time on him being hurt. And that's why his reaction is, that was my favorite arm. And later we're allowed to laugh at him when he has like a tree branch in his stump that's acting as as an arm.
And when his arm did get ripped off, it was like dust came from it. Where is that wound in Douglas or the goat, whatever the goat's name, Alexander? That was like not a festering wound, but like an actual bloody.
There's like blood in it.
Yeah. So I think that's fair. Interesting, Bobby. I think you said it was true to the book, or I don't remember exactly your wording. But then, Lauren, you mentioned that the island is kind of represents sadness. I didn't get that from the book at all. The book the island is just an escape.
The book, if you look at the book at face value, I agree. It's just that Max goes to his room and then disappears into his imagination.
Yeah.
And to a place of wild things that is potentially dangerous, but it's his imagination, so he's always safe. But knowing what we know about Maurice Sendak, like, I don't doubt that the rest of that's in there, at least in his own mind, if not on the page. And so I don't think it's too big of a leap, even though the movie could have been a little brighter. Just a skosh.
On that note, Maurice Sendak, he died a few years ago. It was after the movie, right?
Yeah, it was.
Do we... I might be stepping on trivia. Do we know how he felt about the movie?
He was really involved in it.
Really?
It's been optioned by lots of different places, and the movie had basically stalled since the 90s. It was with Disney first. He was trying to move it around, and he actually was pushing for Spike Jonze. He really liked him as like a young, interesting director, and so he was really on board for it. And he saw the movie, he was like, it's great, and he had no problem with how dark it was and how people perceived that as a problem.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. He did say anyone who thought the movie was too dark could go to hell.
That sounds like...
sounds like, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because the book itself was accused of the same thing. It was actually been on a banned and contested list for since it was published, and there was a psychologist in the 60s that said that this book is damaging to young children.
I feel it was two very different kinds of darkness, though. Like, the book was kind of... I don't want to say glorified, but it's like... Kids have these violent, rumpusy thoughts, and that's okay. The movie was dark in a very different way. Just like
It's sad.
The movie
It's
is
sad.
not
Yeah,
realistic.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I think okay, so at the center of this movie, or at least the center of the island part, you have Max interacting with Carol, who's kind of the wild thing we get to know the most, and he's
Right.
also an analog for Max, and where Max is feeling insecure and left out with his sister or and his mom going in separate directions. Carol is feeling sad because one of his Wild Thing friends, KW, who's voiced by Lauren Ambrose, who's amazing and should be in everything, because she's kind of decided to go on her own in the island for reasons that no one really seems to understand. Like, they don't really get into a motivation or a reason other than she just kind of wants to do something different. And I think we're seeing that through the lens of Max and through the eyes of Carol, who, you know, like, Max doesn't have the emotional vocabulary to understand why, you know, his sister doesn't want to hang out with him anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Or why his mom wants to move on. And so it makes sense that we don't know why KW really wants to move on. Mm-hmm. But I think when you get to the island, and so much of that is around Carol's feelings of insecurity on the island and Carol's emotional journey, that's where it starts feeling really, really... That's where you get that extra layer of, like, melancholy and sadness rather than just Max parading around with a bunch of violent monsters.
Yeah.
And we get that too, but I think it's because we also have, you know, Max having a mirror in the Wild Things.
Mm-hmm.
Can I drop some knowledge that might affect how we talk about it going forward and might be something to consider? Yes. So in trivia, and I've read this in a few places, that in actuality, each Wild Thing is supposed to be a different personality to represent different personalities in Max. Some have described like each is, you know, selfish, shy, angry, lonely, adventurous, moody, and lacking in self-conscious. So each is a facet of Max itself. Not just that their journey is similar, but it's actually supposed to be part of his psyche. So it's like an inside out, but terribly sad. Not just a lot of sad.
Yeah.
Carol is definitely the facet that he relates to the most. And Carol would be...
that's the anger.
Right?
And that's what he's feeling most at this point.
And that's, I mean, also, if we want to jump ahead, that's the one he has to leave behind. You know, that's the one he doesn't really have an adequate goodbye with.
And he totally could have. That boat did not go that far that he couldn't have turned around.
Why did we have that moment?
James Gandolfini could have waited out another 5 feet and given him a hug rather than just that howling.
Why did the movie have to be so sad?
What do we think about the voice casting? I mean, I think, do we agree that everyone did a good job as far as voice acting?
Of course.
I think everyone, and all the acting did a good job.
It's such a weird direction to go with that voice cast, though, right?
You think so?
Yeah, Gandolfini was an interesting choice, certainly.
Just because they're not colorful? Like, I mean, like because they're all kind of subdued and...
Yeah, and I mean...
hyper-realistic?
Yeah. None of them you would associate with kind of like an... I wouldn't cast any of them as monsters, you know? Like, none of them really have, like, kind of that... None of them are particularly intimidating in that way.
Forrest Whitaker?
Okay. But Forrest Whitaker isn't the intimidating...
And also, well, with the exception of Catherine O'Hara, none of them, to my knowledge, are known as big voice actors anyway. Mm-hmm. So, and I think there's a certain colorfulness that usually comes with voice actors that they all... I don't want to call it flat, but it's not as colorful.
And it's part of the delivery as well. Like, they are not... Like, we know Catherine can do... whatever she wants, because she's incredible.
Yeah.
And she is purposely just dark and subdued.
Mm-hmm.
None of them are really affecting their voices. Mm-hmm. You know, like, Douglas sounds unmistakably like Chris Cooper, playing kind of like a good-natured Chris Cooper type.
It was nice not having to hear James Gandolfini breathing all the time. Yeah. That was in The Sopranos.
I thought you could hear him breathing a lot as Carol. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
Inside the suit. He wasn't inside the suit.
No, he wasn't.
No,
there's a moment where I was like, Carol's breathing really heavily in this scene. And I wonder if
maybe it was between... I don't know.
The ending felt so abrupt to me.
His decision to leave?
His decision to leave. And, you know... And I can see why it made sense, but for all the time we spent in the middle, it felt like his leave-taking was just sudden.
And it was predicated on Was it predicated on Carol having this little
Yes.
meltdown?
Yeah.
I would say
And
so.
and then so it feels like, oh, if Carol comes out to howl at him, maybe you don't need to leave.
Yeah, and
It felt like it should have been.
But I think he's realizing there's something innate in Carol. And does Max understand, do you think, that the wild things are facets of himself? Or does he see himself in the wild things?
I think he definitely sees himself in the wild things. I'm sure he doesn't get the full metaphysical
mean-
inside his brainness of it. Maybe he does.
He was really. It felt like there was a sense that certainly not. This isn't an imaginary world to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if he's not making that jump that it's imaginary, I don't know. I don't see him seeing that, being that aware either. But I don't know.
Because,
But I mean, like, recognizing Carol's pain in himself
I see.
and the plight of the wild things, the security and companionship.
Plight of the Wild Things would be a good name for a movie.
but
Yeah, I don't know.
I think he sees something of himself in Carol's anger.
Hey everybody, I realized I was recording with the wrong device, and when I realized that, I stopped it and we started recording again rather than re-recording everything, because we don't want to talk about stuff we already talked about. And hopefully this sounds better. If not, then I'm going to stop using the other recording device. Anyway, what were we saying? Do you remember where we left off?
Looking at facets of himself.
Oh yeah, I think Max sees something of himself in Carol, recognizes the anger, and like either comes to terms with it or realizes that it's not something he wants to be a part of at the moment. And I think he starts missing his home.
Yeah.
I agree. It's maybe not telegraphed.
And it feels, and I see why that's there, but I feel like his leaving is not an achievement at all. Like, because things have gone badly. He came in saying he was going to be king and make everything better, and he didn't. Now, people are upset or disillusioned with him. And it seems as if he is sad and misses home and has been defeated as king, and so he shall leave. Like, it doesn't feel, though he may be having the internal realization of, like, I can't do this, I'm just a kid, I need to go home. It feels like defeat when he leaves, and that seems sad to me.
But it's interesting because it's defeat for... I mean, he learns a negative lesson, but I think he still learns the right lesson. Like, I think he learns that these impulses he has are harmful. Like you're saying, he rules kind of based on these emotions, and it doesn't work out, and that's when he leaves. But yeah, it is kind of a weird character arc when you put it that way.
Yeah, and what happens to there's brain monsters, but like, you just abandoning them to sadness on their sad island? Oh, it's so bleak.
But he has a moment with Carol before he leaves where Carol says, why do you have to leave? And he goes, because I'm not really a king. Where he comes to terms with the fact that he's not really this tough thing he said he was, and Carol's really hurt by it.
Yeah.
I just I really love the moment with Max and KW where it's weird where KW eats him, but he has that really like weird intimate moment with KW also while it sounds so wrong, while he's inside of her.
What was it?
As a child.
But I don't know, it's really interesting. I always think of that as like in my mind that was the last kind of moment before he left, and I guess that's true, but I forget that he has that moment with Carol before he leaves too. Mm-hmm. Barry the dog is asking to be a part of the podcast. He's left me a gift in my lap. I'm trying my hardest not to encourage this.
And again, it might go into trivia. Do their names have any meaning?
No, not that I was able to find.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I would ask, except for a couple things. Carol is definitely
traditionally a woman's name.
Yeah, traditionally a woman's name. So that's the first thing. And also KW begs the question, what does KW stand for? Mm-hmm. And we never know. And so it feels like they should have a meaning. Otherwise, why not just give her some regular name?
Mm-hmm. KW was actually the one, because I was thinking about that this time around. KW is the one name that clicks for me, because KW is kind of like the cool, inaccessible character. You know, like he's the one that he can't totally understand because she's distant. And KW, like the fact that she has initials as a name, just kind of makes her a little bit cooler than the others.
Oh,
well, that is
so
an interesting...
Cool. And she's a redhead, so she's like sexy, but also sort of a girl next door way.
It is an interesting read. I would also point to... I still go back to Carol. Like, that's an interesting decision.
I have no idea what Carol's about.
Alexander, to me, I mean, it's got the X in it, which would put him closer to Max. And yet Ibex. Carol is the more Max character. I don't know, just, I was hoping you guys had an answer. You let me down.
No, they're not even the names from the original book.
Yeah, I noticed that.
I mean, there are no names in the book, but there are no names in the book. But Maurice Sendak had names for them.
Really?
They were based on his relatives, because the book was sort of essentially like they were his aunts and his uncles, like remembering childhood when they would come over and there'd be all these old people like in his face, and he'd like focus on their imperfections and their messed up teeth. And so when he named them, there was like Moisha and Zipsa and Aaron.
Oh, interesting.
That's funny.
Carol is Moisha.
Oh.
What's with the bull?
Yeah, he's
standing out there on his own at the end.
What facet is he supposed to be?
What do you think he would be? Would he be loneliness? I'm reading through the different emotions they were meant to represent. I couldn't place them all exactly. Anger is really easy. Moody, we could go for Judith.
Moody is not an emotion. It's going between emotions.
You know what I mean.
Emo.
Maybe he's loneliness, or
maybe shyness, since he doesn't really join the group.
Apart.
Yeah, I guess.
And that was
that insecurity, the self-consciousness.
Yeah, is this just like a user on IMDb?
Yeah, probably. The IMDb poorly fact-checked information. Yeah. So it's all, again, I'm sorry.
Before we take this as gospel.
We're not in trivia, so I couldn't do my typical disclaimer. But yes, this is all IMDb trivia in which we are not sure if anything is actually accurate.
Yes.
But I did see repeated elsewhere the fact that they were supposed to be certain emotions.
And I definitely took that.
Yeah.
What do we think about Bob and Terry?
That was a weird moment.
That was.
And this movie has a lot, and that's a really high one of, is this making a greater comment on something? Is this a metaphor for something? Or is it just manufactured oddness that we should merely accept as manufactured oddness?
I think Bob and Terry represent adults. Mm-hmm. They like the mother and father figure, male and female, and you don't always understand what adults say when you're a kid.
That part I got. I didn't necessarily about mom and dad, but the everyone understanding what they were saying. But Max and Carol definitely came across as like kids listening to adult gibberish.
And this I'm just totally pulling out of my ass. I'm coming up with right now on the fly. I don't know why they had to throw things at them to get them out of the sky.
They love it.
I take them as not as adults, but as like teenagers, as this like culture that KW is getting. Friends. Yeah, KW is getting more interested in.
KW
but it's just totally inaccessible to Max, and it's just weird and odd to Max, and he doesn't understand. It's not that he doesn't understand the language, but it's that he doesn't understand the appeal either.
Maybe,
and that's like, and
but
also
everyone else did except for Carol, which is interesting.
And Carol's really pissed off when Max lets KW bring them back, because everyone else seems kind of interested in Bob and Terry.
That's an interesting read.
Yeah. But also, I think a lot of it is, a little bit of it also is manufactured weirdness.
Yeah. You see, David Eggers who wrote the script. That's good pedigree.
He did a novelization of the movie also.
Really?
In novel form that I haven't
That's
read.
weird. Is it even darker?
It's like hundreds of pages.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Knowing that Maurice Sendak was so involved in this, I can't bring together in my head how he's, on one hand, he's written this book, which is very bare bones, but then when he's wanting to get the movie off the ground, it really, I don't even want to say changes things, it adds a lot. And it makes me wonder, like, well, if that was kind of your, not your vision, but your idea, why not write a longer book yourself? And maybe not instead of this, but in addition to this.
And I do really like this movie, and I also kind of believe in, just because Maurice Sendak wrote the book doesn't make him necessarily, it doesn't give him more say in whether or not a certain take on the book is better or worse. But right. Of course he's going to like it because it's like you were saying, it's a tone poem that obviously reveres his material without adding, a lot of conventional plot to it, which I think, had it gone with Disney, we would have had a lot more, a lot of other things happen in it that he probably would have rolled his eyes at,
Yeah. I think P.L. Travers was difficult to work with. I could see him having issues.
But, that's why I think Maurice Sendak would have liked this. It reveres his work and it takes it seriously. But I think the weird side effect of that, or the weird conclusion of that, is the movie, there's certainly nothing content-wise that's objectionable for children. I don't know that this movie's for children. Like, I don't know if it's accessible to children.
Yeah.
And Spike Jonze argued that was not his goal at all. Like, he really looked at it as if he was making a film for adults about childhood.
I can see that.
That feels like a little bit of a mistake.
Yeah, I don't think children would be, like, emotionally affected from this movie, just because I don't think they would have the greater life context to put this movie into.
I think they would recognize their own emotions in it, and it could be dark and scary, but I don't feel like they'd be traumatized.
If I was a kid watching this, I think I would appreciate the visuals. I'd appreciate, knocking down trees, but I think I would be very bored as a kid watching this.
Yeah. The melancholiness feels like it's more of an adult thing.
Because it's just, it's in every fissure of the film.
Yeah.
Even the fun scenes are sad and dangerous and frightening.
So dangerous.
The dirt clod war, it's, childhood, and as much as, let's see who gets injured first. But
from the very beginning, there was the threat and danger, it felt like, to Max.
It's interesting because, everything feels dangerous, but I don't know if until Carol gets angry and starts attacking Max, Max's mortality is never necessarily called into question.
I don't know. They turn moments really heavily. They've clearly eaten people, which we're fine with.
But it's played as a joke,
And then the moment when they're after their wild rumpus and they're in the dog pile, I really feel a moment of Max is gonna get smothered.
There is, but it's automatically. I mean, it's almost immediately soothed by KW coming to his aid. And
also, not really also, but going back to that scene, that was an echo of his ice tunnel thing where everyone jumps on it and smashes the tunnel. And to me, that really added the, oh crap, it's just like that before. This has got to be terrifying for him, and it's kind of not.
That ice tunnel scene at the beginning was just the most relatable thing I've ever seen. It's just I don't know. I feel like that's a part of everyone's childhood where you're having fun and then someone takes it too far and suddenly you're crying or someone's crying.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of just runs away.
Yeah.
What did you think of what did you think of the soundtrack? Or does anyone have any opinion on the soundtrack?
What do you feel about Karen O banging Spike Jonze at the time?
Oh, that's Karen O?
Yeah.
I like her. it was definitely more of a folksy sound than you usually hear from her. It worked. I went in the other room while the closing credits were on, and it got to be a bit too much at the time, but during it only occurred to me after the fact, so it didn't bother me in the movie, and actually I think it was appropriate in the movie.
I like the music. I feel the music is capturing more what I want the movie to be. The music is sort of charming and light in spite of how dark and dangerous every single moment is. And I feel like I want more nice, light moments. Like, she picks us up nicely, and it has the nice folksy sound of youth and fun, and in some parts it's really lovely, like when Carol's showing Max his model that he's built, and like it's tinkly and pretty and magical over this little world. It's great, but then I need the movie to match the music more.
It's interesting. Because I really, really like Karen O. Outside of this a lot, but and I remember being super duper excited that she was doing music for it when the movie came out, and I liked it at the time, and I still like it, but I almost feel there's a couple music cues where I think it's specifically her voice just takes over a little bit too much, and I wasn't as in love with the soundtrack this time around, which was interesting, but I might be crazy. I don't know.
Maybe you'd like if it was Michelle Branch.
I mean, you need to lay the fuck off of Michelle Branch, Lauren. She's got a new album out. It's pretty good. You should listen to the Song Exploder episode about it. It's good stuff.
I'm certainly first time watching a movie. I seldom notice the soundtrack, which is, you're not really supposed to. If you do, they say that that's doing too much work, and if it's taking you out of it. Like I said, I didn't really notice it until the end, and then over the closing credits, it got a little cloying. I really liked what they did with the production card logos in the very beginning.
Yes.
Max writing all over them, and that was really cool.
That was.
It went with the book that I checked out, where some shithead kid wrote all over the book.
Those were charming. And then I'm curious what you guys feel about immediately starting on a really shaky cam, harsh scene of Max chasing and terrorizing the dog, which obviously is straight from the book, but is also an introduction to Max. Was like, oh, this kid.
Yeah, that's where I get the emotional problems. Mostly is how he treated the dog and tearing up his sister's room, and it does go a lot further than the book.
And he's angry and he's a child, and it makes sense. But it's such an interesting choice because I feel like that, as our introduction, immediately separates us from Max.
Well, okay, it's our immediate introduction, and then smash cut to credits. Right afterwards, we get a vulnerable moment of Max going out into the snow and playing and trying to play with his sister and getting it ruined. I think we get
the dog beat
the outside perception of Max, and then we also then get a scene to endear us toward Max.
Sure, but it takes longer to get there, and that's such an interesting, and I'm sure absolutely on purpose to set us at odds to him and then win us back. But it's so interesting, just immediately
I wonder if
having to get over dog torment from this child.
I wonder if it's part of it too is, for people who've read the book, and I'm going to assume that's a lot of people, the image of Max chasing the dog is so...
You want to hit
it's immediately recognizable, but also the movie's like, look how incredibly annoying that is, and look how incredibly violent that is. It's not an adorable kid chasing a dog. It's this really angry kid who's just being a little shit,
I thought you were going to mention just go on the shaky cam, and there was definitely too much of that for me, which, like the soundtrack, I seldom really notice things like that. But I was really noticing it, especially toward the end, where I'm like, just hold still for a minute. And also too much lens flare in a few certain parts. I'm getting a little nitpicky about it, but when I notice it, that's something. Any other things?
I thought their fort looked really cool.
Yeah, it looks very pretty. They're very good builders.
Yeah.
Considering they have twigs to work with.
And I was really good at putting holes in trees also.
And the whole ground, apparently.
He
did the tunnels.
Movie.
And then the other thing I wanted to touch too, that isn't a visual thing. I really liked, the book ends with all the monsters on the shore yelling after Max and saying, don't go, I'll eat you up, I love you so.
Yeah.
And instead they give that line to KW, and she says it really tenderly to him. And I don't know if it's totally earned by the movie. And it's interesting when I watched the trailer for the first time, I was like, oh, this movie is gonna like make me cry, and it didn't. But the closest it comes is that line is just played really beautifully, and I think it's hitting that nerve, that connection to the book. I don't know what it is. I don't know if that moment's earned. I just really like it.
I kind of agree with that. I feel like that's sort of my critique of The Island, that it's so morose and melancholy, and I feel like more moments of fun and then also love, like clear love and affection are needed. And there's a little bit in there, but there's so much just sadness, and KW spends so much time just like bummed out, even when she's feeling affection. So like, yeah, I agree that it needs even just a few more moments to get there.
I definitely felt, and we've talked about the term manipulative before in movies, about how, I mean, all movies are, if they're going for an emotion, it's manipulative, and the real difference is whether or not it's earned. And at the end, I was thinking, oh, this is manipulative, because it is trying to pull tears from my eyes, but like, wait a minute, I was bored by so much of this movie. Why is it happening? Oh, that's why. It's the music and the visuals and the good acting and all that stuff.
And it wasn't clear that any of them had feeling for Max, and so for his going to be so sad for them all.
Like, even the one he was closest to, Carol, it really felt like this is a good guy to be angry with and have fun with, and it's not, there's no deeper connection.
But then there's the little heart and twig.
Well, obviously it would...
And
it did go both ways, but you only see that at the end when it is being manipulative, in my opinion, and not earning it.
I think it earns some of it. Like, I don't know that it earns the KW line, but Max leaving Carol on the shore while they're howling at each other, and the two of them are kind of parting their ways because of course they have to. Like, I think it earns that.
Yeah. That was the closest I got to cry.
That certainly hits. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. Like, if everything in this movie worked, and again, I still really like this movie. It's kind of like a weird, like, not inverse, but it's where like Inside Out, which is a perfect movie, says like part of growing up is you have to give up. You have to accept sadness into your life. You have to, you have to give up some of your joy, because that makes your emotions more complex. Where the Wild Things Are is just like, just being a kid sucks, like you don't, it's all anger and sadness, and you don't have a grip on what your emotions are or why you feel that way. I think that's an interesting take on childhood and the emotions you feel when you're a child, that I don't know. I can't really point to another movie that has that thesis.
It really does feel like a Maurice Sendak take on it. Yeah. It's like, God, what happened to this kid? Or Hans Christian Andersen. I could totally see him having that background. He would have that. Yeah.
There'd be a lot more child murder if it were Hans Christian Andersen, though.
It's really interesting what different people take from childhood, and I'm sure a lot of it has to do with everyone's individual childhood and their personality, what they remember and everything. But because some people have the halcyon, really wonderful childhoods, and then you have people who are like, this is childhood. It hurts, and it's it's angry and all this other stuff. And I don't know. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Anything else? Or shall we move on to our segments?
Let's do it.
Lauren. I know we've touched on it a lot. But let's do IDOBM IMDb Trivia TM.
I really have touched on a lot of it. I'm not sure. I think I may have
We'll just do the theme
spoiled all my good stuff.
Okay, it might be closing theme, but...
We covered a lot of stuff. I about the suits, and I love that they did try to do live action suits for this. Like, that was great, and a lovely callback to something more visceral. And I would say it's such a shame they had to go CGI, but it looks seamless. It
looks good, yeah.
So good.
And
it's because there's something also tangible, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't even see the holes in, like, the child actor who has to act with a faceless monster with, an actor somewhere inside saying their lines.
And it was so good at... It certainly doesn't look exactly... It looks like it sprung from the page and became three-dimensional and live action. And it's... They did an amazing job at that.
And just a little bit more... just Spike Jonze is such a good director, and some of the fun trivia was just all the effort and love he put into this. And part of the approach that I was reading about I really liked was that, he had his voice cast in place, and he actually had them all come together and act out scenes on a soundstage together instead of what would more traditionally be done, filming the movie and then recording the voices later. He really wanted the performance to come out of his voice cast performance. And so we'd have them all with radio microphones attached to their heads, and either Jones or Catherine Keener would be performing Max, which was interesting to me that she was so involved. And before they even got together, part of their exercises before, he took them all to Griffith Park to have an actual dirt clod war. But then watching them in the movie, that's a terrible idea. You don't throw dirt at Catherine O'Hara. That's not a thing that happens.
That's funny.
And that was probably the best one. We covered the other ones. Some more of the names, just because I enjoy the Jewish names so. Maurice named his wild things, again, after his aunts and uncles. There was Bernard, Sipsa, Moisha, Goat Boy's in here for some reason. And
Goat Boy?
Bruno. Yeah, it says Alexander Parentheses Goat Boy. I'm like, what? I don't know who Goat Boy was in the family. I feel bad for them.
Maybe it was a nickname he gave them.
Maybe.
The whole time. Huh.
And then just... The movie passed through so many hands, and a lot of the trivia is just how sad it was that the studios were disappointed with the direction it was going, and the concern that it was far too dark, and not appreciating that he was making a adult movie rather than a children's movie, and all of them just smack of the sadness of, this should have been better. And then if anyone wants to go see the bit of animation that Disney has, it's on YouTube from the 1980s. It was produced by John Lasseter, and it is just a quick minute segment from the beginning of the book. It's what the beginning imaginings of what the Disney Wild Things would have looked like. And I don't think I like it, but it's certainly interesting to look at, especially when you consider it's the 80s and they were just beginning to play with animation.
It looks ahead of its time.
It does.
Sure. Yeah.
It's surprising how good it looks,
Lauren,
really.
They've been doing animation years before the 80s.
Digital animation.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
Yeah, especially after Warts and all, watching this and then going to the Disney one, the way they draw Sam is so sanitized.
He looks like a lost boy.
Max.
Yeah. Max, yeah.
Oh, did I say Sam?
Yeah.
It's because I'm looking at you, Sam.
He's so cute. Oh, he's going to watch it.
So I'll definitely have to watch that, yeah.
Yeah, he looks cute and quaint.
Mm-hmm.
So that part's weird. But the animation looks really cool.
Looks really cool.
The movement of the camera is neat.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks. Shall we do verdicts? Bobby, you've already said you still enjoy this movie.
I do. I actually...
the first time.
I was afraid this was going to be... Because I haven't seen it in a long time, I was afraid this was going to be a Tron Legacy thing where I was watching it going this movie's dumb. But,
you admit it.
It's still fun. Fuck you.
We need to revisit that one.
Tron Legacy is the perfect. I'm cleaning the house. I'm just gonna have something cool on in the background. But no, I still really liked this movie, and I'm still glad. I'm glad I own it because I will watch it again eventually when I want to feel terrible about everything. But yeah, no, I love it.
Cool, Lauren.
I want to like it more. I really do. Just having the love of the book and love of the creative team, thinking it looks beautiful. I want to love this movie, and I don't, and that makes me sad. And it's still, I recognize what's good about it, and it's on a par of, not as good of a movie, but your Schindler's List. Even if it were great, I'm not gonna watch it again. I've done it the once and I'm good. But unfortunately, it's a bit sadder, my separation from it.
It's interesting going into it. Because again, I was unreasonably excited about it going into theaters. I thought it was going to be more more Wes Anderson-y, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I've watched this, even though I see kind of the imperfections in this, like a Wes Anderson-y Where the Wild Things Are is like the last fucking thing I want.
Yeah, I wouldn't have wanted that. I appreciate the desire to make it real and dark, and it's not their fault that visceral stories about how awful childhood is really gets me. Like, that's not their problem. They made the right choice in so many ways, and I'm just sad that it's not even better.
I'm going to echo kind of what you said, Lauren, in that, I mean, I appreciate what they're doing. I can see the quality in it. It's not for me. And again, tone poems can suck it. And so maybe it's just because of that. But yeah, it really didn't speak to me. And also not having the history with the book might have made a difference. Now, if they did like the monster at the end of this book, I would be all over that movie.
Oh, they'd have to inflate it so much,
yeah,
though.
No. And they put Elmo in it like they did with the...
Oh, of course they would, because Grover's not great enough.
Huge mistake.
Grover's not already a perfect character.
Right, yeah. So yeah, I'd have to give it like... and like Lauren says, like, I like Spike Jonze. I hate to not like something that he did, but here we are. So, anyway, now let's talk about the movie we wish we'd seen.
Ugh, this movie is crap. I could write a better movie in my sleep.
And now, IDOBM presents the movie we'd wish we'd seen.
Where we take an aspect of this movie and make a sequel, prequel, some sort of side thing. This is interesting. I haven't given any thought to this right now, so I'm not sure where to go with it. But Lauren, do you have somewhere where you go with that?
I always have a hard time with, like, what's the sequel, prequel you want? I have to be like, I want to see this movie with a bit more fun and a bit more love.
Yeah.
And also an idea of where Max has been and how long he's been gone. The book has such an interesting touch of he goes to his room and it's a crescent moon, and he leaves and it's a full moon, and like Max in our movie gets home and Mom's been sitting there waiting for him, not worried like he's been gone for days, but like
felt like a couple hours.
How long has he been gone?
Boyfriend has gone. That has left.
Yeah.
I want to see her like have a fight with Ruffalo.
It feels like it's
what
later
was Mom
that night.
doing this whole time? I want Mom to escape to her imaginary world.
There you go.
And see what her wild things look like.
Now you're getting the hang of this segment.
And we go into her brain and see that her reality is controlled completely by Judith's. It's an inside out joke. Anyway.
You think it'd be Judith?
I was just trying to go who would be sadness, but Judith wouldn't be sadness.
No.
It would be Alexander.
Yeah.
Similarly, I thought of mine. I want to see the Hook version of this movie where he comes back 30 years later.
Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. Only it sucks.
It would be as
Hook
good
sucked.
as Hook, yeah.
Yeah. Amazing, Bobby.
I think we need to do Hook next.
Oh,
Sam was the one who called Hook out on sucking, and I just seconded it, and I get yelled at.
Yeah, you're
That's
both
some bullshit, Lauren.
Oh, we're doing Hook. That's my next movie. Screw y'all.
God, we thought this movie was long. Wait till we watch Hook.
Punch you both in the
Fun fact, Blade Runner 2049 is shorter than Hook.
and not nearly as much fun.
I really hope you're joking.
No, Hook
is
is like 4 hours long. It's a mini. It originally aired as a miniseries.
Okay. No, that's not entirely
It's not
true.
Don't believe him.
It just feels like that. We already know that you don't get movie times wrong with the whole Pet Cemetery Great Wall fiasco.
Hook is well over 2 hours, though, right? Hang on, say that again. Sorry.
Okay, it wasn't that good. I don't know. Let's find out.
Hey Siri, how long is the movie Hook?
Okay, it's over 2 hours. That checks out.
Okay, we're not doing
And
it.
every moment is amazing.
Hilariously, Siri answered the question, "How long is the movie Her?" Which is Spike Jonze. Yeah. Okay.
Ruffalo.
I didn't look.
Ruffalo.
Not in that. No.
I know.
Okay.
It's Rufio. What is it?
Oh, Rufio.
That was a Hook joke.
I liked it.
Anyway,
Those are really
how about you,
quick.
Bobby? What movie would you like?
I'd like to see the movie where the boyfriend gets really angry and decides to go save Max from the wild beasts.
Is that your Planet Hulk? Is that...
No. This is maybe not a very interesting thing to say, but I would love to see what, on the complete and total flip side, what Pixar in maybe the early 2000s would have done with a property like Where the Wild Things Are.
You want to be early 2000s, not after they mastered hair?
What? Monsters Inc. was early 2000s, right? Sully looked pretty amazing.
Siri?
I'm going to say 2002. 2002 was Monsters Inc.
Oh,
right?
that sounds way too early, but let's find out.
Why
'Cause
not?
I can't really gauge time after the millennium.
Why not now? I mean, obviously,
Why not now?
They already did it with Inside Out, but why are you looking for that period?
I feel like
2001.
It was pretty early.
I think Inside Out is maybe my favorite Pixar movie, but I also feel like, actually, I don't know why I threw them shade right now. Maybe it's because their last movie was a Cars movie, but I haven't really
That's
loved.
not their fault.
I haven't really loved The Good Dinosaur, which didn't
You
get a ton of
did?
love. Yeah,
You did.
Good Dinosaur
I mean, I'm
got
not saying
to me.
you're the worst.
Good Dinosaur. Yeah, no, I thought Good Dinosaur was really good. But I'm getting attacked by Barry the dog again. But I would love to actually see like a well executed, more conventional version of this movie that adds the plot points that Maurice Sendak would have hated, but still masters all of the feels.
Do you know something that I find so interesting about Good Dinosaur? That they purposely made a point to rewrite the history of the planet just so they could have dinosaurs and humans living side by side.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they didn't want to fudge that fact. They didn't want to just, slap them up on screen and not explain it. That they had to say, science, we're changing it because science.
The Good Dinosaur did the weirdest thing in its marketing campaign, and Zootopia did a similar thing. I think both are excellent movies, but The Good Dinosaur spent so much attention to like the premise is that the asteroid misses the planet and dinosaurs exist at the same time as humans,
And it really felt like it would be something
which is
different.
Yeah, you could just market that movie as like, this is a Pixar movie about grief, and mourning, like which
And we buy it.
which I feel would
Pixar.
actually get more people to the theaters because people go to Pixar for like the emotional roller coasters that they are. Zootopia did a thing where they're like, in Zootopia, animals talk and act like humans. And I'm like, that's literally every Disney movie. Like, literally every
Pixar
Disney
can
movie.
say, this is a commentary on systemic racism.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Bobby, that's how they did every Disney movie. Like, that's how they did Robin Hood and Saludos Amigos.
But it was that was the entire Zootopia ad campaign. And I'm like, I don't understand how this is differentiating it from any Disney movie.
And it really doesn't feel like this is going to draw... What? Animals that walk and talk? I'm going to that movie. Like, what's getting people in the door?
It's like they have someone in their marketing team who is just like, we really need to explain this or people will not understand it. People will be so turned off by the fact that dinosaurs are existing at the same time as humans, or people are going to be so turned off by the fact that animals are walking on two legs and talking to each other.
You know what's funny is, I don't remember what I was listening to. It was some sort of podcast or something where it was marketing departments, and it was about how like trailers give away too much, I think. Mm-hmm. And the idea was that marketing department has to have this idea that every movie they get, how are we going to save this movie? How are we going to get people to come to this movie? So they have to have the idea that like the movie in itself isn't enough. So how do we, so I wonder if it has something to do with that. Like, they're like, oh God, animals that walk and talk. How are we going to... Okay, first we have to explain to people.
That's interesting. So you're automatically looking for the problem people are going to have to try to then figure out the way around it.
Or just like, like this movie, it's not... This movie is not going to get... People aren't going to go to on its own merit. We have to get people there. And that's why they have to feel like they have to give up all the plot twists and everything too. So I wonder if that enters into it. Or
yeah, that's very interesting.
But yeah, I mean, and just the idea that they have to have the idea like, this movie isn't good. Not, people aren't going to come see this movie. Anyway, I don't know. Just a thought.
It's almost like we didn't know that we were going to be filming a podcast, Lauren.
I have to take my pill, dude.
She does. That's a big...
I watched this movie, and I know having a child is the wrong choice. So I gotta make sure I take this thing.
Okay, guys, we only have 8 more segments, and then we'll be ready to go. No,
All right, I'll take it off snooze.
So let's do things that need no defense. And that is, of course, just whatever we're into right now. And I'll start. I might do a couple things, but the first thing, there is this YouTube channel that I've listened to a few of them and I hate it. It's Everything Wrong With. And
from CinemaSins.
Yeah, from CinemaSins, where this complete asshole goes and nitpicks a movie to death.
And willfully ignores logic.
Yeah.
Misinterprets the film, misinterprets filmmaking. And part of their mission statement is saying that these are intentional mistakes because they are satirizing your kind of nitpicky film person, which does not check out because they don't know how satire works.
And this is what is bringing me to another YouTube called Everything Wrong With. I don't remember what it's called, but like at least one of their videos is Everything Wrong With. Cabin in the Woods is the first one I watched, and it was amazing. Yeah. It both showed you everything cool about the movie, but it pointed out everything wrong with the stupid CinemaSins video. And I feel like I probably shouldn't be promoting this because I'm also kind of promoting the CinemaSins, and also it's like, oh, you're just putting hate out there. So,
but you're fighting hate with accurate. You're fighting
fake
true. News with accurate information.
That's what it is.
And normally. When people rush to the defense of things and be like, no, this person who's criticizing it is wrong, I usually like facepalm pretty hard because I'm like, just let people like or dislike things. Yeah. But it's so awesome because CinemaSins is such bullshit. Yeah.
They're real smug about
everything wrong about like shitty critic culture,
and if they are
armchair critic culture, sorry.
Yeah, and if they are so they say that they're like a satire, but they're not really. They're blowing or like.
It doesn't check out because it doesn't make clear what they would be satirizing.
I've never seen critics that just go point by point saying everything wrong with the movie.
And
this is not a thing.
And they also make a couple of good points, which the Everything Wrong With video points out that like I didn't mention these things that they said that were fair. Yeah. So. Yeah, they're terrible videos, and watching someone give them their comeuppance was very satisfying. I agree.
So yeah, I'll put that out there. And then also, I've been watching The Good Place, and I'm almost caught up. And it was a lot of fun, despite the fact that Lauren started watching it, continued to watch it without me, and I had to watch it with her
on the podcast.
When we got to a big plot point, it was one of those like normally it would be like we would look at each other and go like, "Oh my God, did you see that coming?" Instead, it was like me just sitting there by myself going, "I got it, Lauren. You watched it without me."
Oh, in the nursing home, he's still going to be talking about this.
And also get a dog because this dog is hilariously
get a dog.
Get a dog. Dropping his tug of war toy right at my hand as I'm trying to record this podcast. Who wants to go next?
Okay, I will say very briefly, Blade Runner 2049 is really, really good. No one's watching it. You should all be ashamed of yourself. This is why we can't have nice things. Go watch it. But that's not what I'm going to recommend. I have spoken before on this podcast about my love for Mark Russell's Flintstones reboot for DC Comics and how great it is. That has come to an end. But now he's going to be doing Snagglepuss.
Oh, dear.
And I'm just going to read you a brief clip from Mark Russell about what Snagglepuss is going to be about in his reboot. Snagglepuss in this story is having to live a double life as a gay playwright living in New York, and he's closeted. But he has values and integrity as an artist, and he's trying to stand up for people who would otherwise be shoved under the stairs in this time of great national paranoia and the Red Scare mentality. It's very easy in a time of national catastrophe to throw people under the sink and forget about them, and Snagglepuss is unwilling to let them do that to the people he knows and loves. He's willing to stand up for people when the rest of the country is not. I cannot fucking wait for the Snagglepuss comic. I am so excited. I'm going to show Sam and Lauren what Snagglepuss looks like in the comic.
He's like a dapper Colonel Sanders.
Yes. Can I ask you something? Aside from Exit Stage Right, what do you know about Snagglepuss?
Nothing.
Yeah, okay. And I wondered if he's relying on that and he's just like, okay, this is what I want to write about. What Hanna-Barbera character could I possibly... The pink cat. There it is.
Please, with that description, can you at all deny that that's what Snagglepuss is? You know enough about the way he talks to see why
that is true. Very true.
Even...
That's Snagglepuss, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
But anyway, I'm very excited for that.
Actually, on that note, are they going to collect that Flintstones ones? Because I don't want to friggin' buy comic books. Okay.
They have 2 volumes out right now.
Okay. Buy them for me and give them to me. Or...
I have the first one, and I will bring it to you next time.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And I just ordered the second one, and it'll be arriving tomorrow at my house.
Awesome.
I'm very excited.
All right, cool. Lauren, what have you got?
This is specifically for LA folks, so all of our national and international listeners, you're going to have to be in the LA area to really appreciate this. Over the weekend...
Sorry, Sarah.
Aww. If she listens. She doesn't have power. How could she charge her phone? Oh, that's sad.
On our podcast.
So over the weekend, Sam and I went to see a production by the Rogue Artist Ensemble. They have set up a immersive theater experience in an old warehouse in the middle of the West Adams district, and I highly recommend it. I'll read a little about it. It's called The Caden Project. Walls Grow Thin. That's the title. It's a multi-sensory, immersive, site-specific experience refracting ancient Japanese ghost stories through a modern, multicultural lens, revealing the noise of our histories and the silence that haunt us. And it was really beautiful. It's sort of the cure for the fact that Delusion is not running this season, but it was also just great. The Rogue Artist Ensemble is a really neat theater company. They do really beautiful stuff with highly visual tones. Puppetry is a big part of their work, and it was just a really lovely piece. Again, like breaking up these different Japanese myths, and you're led through the space in small groups, and you have this awesome, beautiful ghost story experience. It was really exciting. They've extended now through November 19th, and that's a hard closing date there. But if you'd like to go check them out at therogueartist.org, I would highly recommend it.
You're really putting the pressure on me to get this podcast out so that people, so that our 8 listeners can
you have to make sure they go.
Can get there by the 19th. Having seen it with Lauren, I would second everything she said. And this is a really appropriate episode to do it on because it was something with puppet work. And creature creation, and the puppet work was very good in this show. It was fantastic. All right, thank you, Lauren. I'm going to plug Upperclassmen probably has a show coming up. You should check it out.
On December 10th.
December 10th.
It's the next show.
It is our holiday spectacular. And please come out to that.
Long Beach Playhouse.
I would say check out our website, which is there. It is idobmpodcast.com. Like us on iTunes, or give us positive reviews on iTunes, 5 stars, please, and say something. It helps people find the show. I hear that on other podcasts, and I believe it's true. And you could tweet us or email us. Is Twitter is at IDOBM
Podcast.
And email is indefenseofbadmovies@gmail.com. Anything else anyone wants to put out there?
Yeah, I'm on another podcast.
That's right.
Yes, it's called You're Wrong with Ian and Bobby.
So this is your exit interview.
I just want to talk about my mistress. Is that okay? No, it's a pop culture podcast where my high school buddy Ian and I try to get each other to watch and read things that the other person likes, and it's I like it. It's good.
Cool.
What's your next show about?
Our next show is going to be about Justice League and World of Tomorrow.
Justice League, the TV show?
The TV show.
Oh, I love that. Lauren could have been on that.
So you should tune in, Sam.
I will.
I sing the theme song. It's good times.
What's it called again?
You're Wrong with Ian and Bobby.
Okay. And that'll be on iTunes or wherever
iTunes and Google
podcasts are played. Cool. Awesome. I will definitely check that out. And I'm sorry, it was Justice League. And what was the other one?
The short film World of Tomorrow.
Welcome to the world of tomorrow. This is that Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Awesome. All right, Lauren, do you want to plug anything?
No.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, everyone, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.